Let's get crafting for summer. Hi, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kelsey. I also call myself Dinosaur Mama, and today we are making a pineapple box. This project actually includes 2 free SVG files, so you can make them separately, but I did want to keep the hibiscus flower separate from the pineapple box just in case you wanted to download the flower for any other project. Per usual, or if you are new here, all of the information like materials and tools, as well as the blog post that links to the free SVG files, will be linked below in the description. Let's start in Cricut Design Space. So the first thing I did was just resized my hibiscus flower, and at the end, I ended up making this a little bit bigger. So we're just gonna move this off to the side for now. And then I checked my box. When you upload it, it should be the exact right size for a 12 by 12 piece of paper, meaning it maxes out around 11.5 or under. And I think it's at like 11.43. So this should be good to go. You don't need to change anything else. And the perforation marks are already inside of the SVG file. So switching back to the hibiscus flower, I ended up making it a little bit bigger so that it was a little bit easier to assemble. But the hibiscus itself will be 3.5 inches wide. And then that strip that you see on the side is going to be to wrap the floral wire. So you do need that. And then I sent it over to my machine and I just reorganized if I needed to. And I cut everything out on medium cardstock. I used an 80-pound cardstock, and I always use the medium cut setting, so that'll also depend on your blade sharpness. And then I like to do everything on fast mode, but these settings are up to you and also up to your machine. So to start with your hibiscus flower, you are going to want to color in your center, and the color of your center is going to depend on your paper. I went with a pink for my flower, and so I am going to color in the center with a darker pink. So I actually mixed it up, and I'm using all acrylic paints from the Dollar Tree. So it's nothing fancy or anything special for my paper. It's red, black, and white just to make it a little bit lighter, and I mixed those together and then just painted on the center. And when I was painting, I did brush some off onto the side because I didn't want it to be like too heavy. Like, look at how much was on my brush. So I did remove some of it, and I'm not painting my table. There's a piece of paper there, but I'm just doing slight strokes up so that it has kind of like an ombre look out. And this is going to be the center of the flower, so it is going to be folded in. You won't really see it. And then to spread it out even more, I just grabbed a sponge brush and kind of patted it outwards. If your paper is super thin, keep in mind the heaviness of the paint. It might warp your paper. My paper is pretty thick and I didn't use a ton of paint, so my paper stayed pretty solid for the most part. It did get a little watery. And then I went back with a little more white onto this, so not just plain white, like I grabbed the color I'd already mixed. And I lightened up my center just a little bit, and then I also use this for details later on once I've assembled the flower. So I'm just grabbing some sharp tweezers here, and I'm going to poke a hole right in the middle. This is where we're going to attach our little stem through the center. So you can do this now or once it's ready to have the stem, but I do want you to keep in mind you will need to do this. So I'm just poking it through. It doesn't matter if you go from the bottom or the top because we're going to put something in it, so you won't even see it. And now you're going to want to use hot glue for this, and I'm just folding the petals over each other and overlapping. So I like using hot glue for these. Sometimes I use my craft glue, but I'm going to use hot glue today. And I'm going to overlap these so that they stick together. I haven't really shaped the petals yet. You can do that before or during, it doesn't matter. But I'm just using my fingers to shape and just bending back. So you can use your bone tool, you can use a finger, it doesn't matter. But you just want to give them a little bit of a slight curl outwards. And then in that center, since we're folding in, it's going to make like a cone. So see, I'm using my fingers to kind of shape. I did get ball tools for flowers, and I'm not gonna lie, I forgot to use them. So I'm just so used to using my bone tool and my fingers. So using that same technique, once you get into doing your flower, you can shape all of the petals and then attach them on the side. So it's going to be this overlap throughout all of them. So I'm just shaping. And again, I went back to just using my fingers, then flipping to the bone tool and just kind of flipping those petals out. And then I'm kind of like bending them in. So I'm flipping the tops out and then bending the centers in. And then I'm really only using my hot glue at the bottom of the petal, like towards the bottom to attach them. So I'm leaving the tops of those petals kind of like detached and opened to form this bell shape. And you can always bend the tops of the petals back more after you've created the bell shape. So just keep that in mind, like what I'm doing here. And then once you have it as the shape that you want it, I did go back in with my paint. So I grabbed that color that I had made. It's like a little bit of a mix between a purple and a pink. And I just added on a little details on to the hibiscus to give it a little more like depth. But again, this is optional if you don't want to keep painting. If you're making like a million of these and you don't want to take the time, it's totally up to you. So I'm just painting on some right on the edge and just adding on some details. And here is our hibiscus without the center. So let's go ahead and jump to making our center. So the best way to measure your center is to just measure it up against your wire, the height of the flower. You really don't want it super long. You also don't want it too short. You want it basically the length of the flower. And I'm just bending back and forth until mine breaks. You could, of course, use wire cutters if you have them, or floral wire if you have that as well. And now I have my little strip of wire, and I have my strip of paper that I also cut out. It's part of the SVG file. And I'm just taking some hot glue and I'm going to wrap it all the way down. So I'm just spiraling it around the wire. And as I did this, I just spiraled it around and I kept it as close to the wire as possible. If your glue pops off, just re-glue it down at the bottom, because we're also going to attach it with hot glue when we attach it to our hibiscus. And then with the extra length I had at the end, I wrapped it towards the top, like over and over. Here you can see it, me just like kind of like wrapping it to create a ball. And it ended up looking like really beautiful. So I really liked it. And that is how your little stem should look at the end. And so the bigger ball is going to be the top of the flower. I think it's called a stemma, but that's not right. I don't know. And so I should look that up. I'm sorry. I shouldn't just say I don't know. And now I'm attaching my little circles. I'm using my tweezers. I should have used my quick stick for this to pick them up. And I'm attaching these on with hot glue as well. I just did them all around this little piece. You can put them on however you want, or you can actually use like little gold balls that they sell, like the little foam balls, whichever you prefer. But I did want to include them in the file since they are a major part of the flower. And then once you have those on, it will look something like this. So just be patient with yourself as you're gluing. It does take a little bit of time, and that is our final little stem. And now I'm going to attach my stem in. So I did make my hole a little bit bigger, and I'm just placing it through gently. I don't want to rip it open too big. And then I'm going to take my hot glue in on the other side to attach it down. So if you wanted to make this like a free hanging flower, you could add a longer piece of floral wire, attach it like this, and then wrap it in like a washi tape or a floral tape. But since we're just setting it onto the pineapple, I didn't do any of that. I just left it open in the back. So I'm just gluing that on so that's attached, and that is our final hibiscus flower. So the top and the bottom are going to be made in a super similar way. So if I'm going to speed through the other side, the only difference is the bottom is going to have the little notches, the triangles cut out, and you can choose to bend those out slightly or not, totally up to you, but I will show that in a little bit. But I'm folding in on everything. It's all going to fold in the same direction. And then we are going to attach the two sides together. So I'm just using my craft glue here. You can use hot glue or a tape gun if you prefer, but I'm going to attach those with the little flap on the inside. And like I said, this box actually goes together relatively quickly, so you can make a whole bunch of these for your next party. It'd be a super cute favor to give out for any sort of like tiki theme or even just a summer party, a way to kick it off, or even like 4th of July, anything like that. Now each angled part that's going to go in is going to also have a little flap that we're going to attach onto the side, the piece that's next to it. So you're going to want to line these up as close as possible and take your time to let them dry so that when you move on to the next one, it doesn't pop open. So just take your time as you work around your box and make sure you're using your glue that will set quickly or that it's fully set. I'm just making sure that everything is lined up as nicely as possible because it will make a perfect hexagon, yeah, at the end. And now we will attach our centerpiece. And now for our centerpiece, this is going to be a little bit easier to do with this top part rather than on the bottom, just because your fingers will fit in a little bit better. But you're just going to put glue all around the inside of the lid and also the inside of the bottom. And then this hexagon, I swear I'm good at math, will fit right in, and we're just going to glue those little flaps down. So you don't have to fold them a ton. It was more just to have a little bit of pliability. Oh man, I sound really blonde right now. But it's just being pressed down with my fingers. For the bottom part, I believe I switched between like tweezers, my bone tool, and my fingers to keep it in. And that is your top piece. So we still have to attach the stem, which again is really easy to do, but that is your top. And now, just like for the top, I'm going to speed through the bottom. It's very similar to how you assemble it. So I'm just going through and I am attaching the flap on the inside and then folding in on all of those angled pieces and gluing those flaps down as well to create that angle. So it's just exactly the same as we did for the top. And like I mentioned before, this little hexagon that you're going to place in the bottom, it might be a little more difficult to just hold down, so just be patient with yourself. I'm putting the glue on the hexagon this time, but you can put it at the bottom again, whichever you prefer. And see, my fingers are like not long enough to fit in, so I'm using my tweezers to kind of put it into place. So just have some patience while you glue this piece down. And here I am shoving my whole hand into it to secure it down, so this also works. Just make sure it's lined up to where you need it to be if you're doing this. Now we're moving on to our final stage here, and we're going to curl our leaves. So you can do this in bulk. I'm using my bone tool. You can use your fingers, and I am just curling them away from each other. So everything's going to go out. So just think of how a pineapple is. Those leaves don't ever curl in. They always curl out. So everything's going to be curled out. You can curl them left, right, but just make sure that the general direction is away from the center, not towards the center. So I did some like kind of curled towards the left and some kind of curled towards the right. And then that way when you put it on, it kind of all looks more realistic, even though I know this doesn't look like a realistic pineapple. And then I'm also using my fingers to bend them the opposite way to give it a curve in the center. So we're gonna bend the petals out, so curve them out at the top and then bend them in at the bottom in the center. So that way it's able to be put together in a round sort of way. And I'm using my hot glue for this again, and I'm going to put a little dab in the center of the ones that are connected, and I'm going to connect the two that are connected. So it'll be 4 petals, and this is going to be our base, our bottom. And then just like we did with the hibiscus flower, we're going to go around with our hot glue and attach them where they overlap. So you're just going around in a circle. I'm not gluing it all the way up the leaf. I'm just gluing it a little bit at the bottom and then going around the whole thing each way with a little bit of hot glue, and then overlapping them so that it gives the illusion of a real pineapple stem. And then once you have your base done, we can start adding on some height. And so all I'm doing is putting a little bit of hot glue in between the 2 leaves and then adding an additional leaf higher up. So it's not all the way in the bottom, like at the base, it's like halfway between the leaves. So it gives a little bit more height. And then I'm just adding more hot glue, a little bit like strip in between them, and then adding the next leaf on. I'm not being picky about which way the leaf is bending or anything. I just picked up a random one, so don't think that that's really going to matter in the end look as long as they're facing out. And you're just going to put them about halfway up, and then you're going to do that again for another row. So I did 3 rows on mine. You are more than welcome to cut out more leaves. I included 3 in the SVG file, but you can do more. And I am just adding in another row. So I put a strip of hot glue, and then I'm attaching these again in between the 2 of the previous row with a little bit of height added to them so that it's a little bit higher up. And that is how you make your pineapple stem. And I think it looks actually like pretty realistic. Like, I'm pretty proud of this. So for your final assembly, I am using my hot glue again. You're going to stick your stem right onto the center. Make sure that your lid is completely dry because you don't want to put that stem on and then the hexagon fall through the center. And then I'm attaching my hibiscus flower again with some hot glue. If you want to use something else to attach it, that's totally up to you. But that's it. I'm just gluing them together. Once everything is set, this is your final pineapple box favor, whatever you'd like to call it. I love the way that it came out. I'm really happy with this hibiscus flower, and I hope you enjoyed making this project. Thank you so much for watching as we created this pineapple box with a hibiscus flower. If you enjoyed this video and you love my projects, please don't forget to give them a thumbs up, as well as subscribe and turn on your alerts so you know when a new project is available for you to create. Stay crafty!